Damian Blake hated weddings. He hated the forced small talk, the endless photos, the too loud music, and most of all, he hated sharing anything, especially hotel rooms. But when you're the best man and your best friend's bride accidentally double books the resort suite with her curvy, too loud, too charming best friend, you find yourself in a situation even your billions can't buy your way out of. Damian's life was meticulously curated. Every minute, every meeting, every relationship timed and trimmed for efficiency. There was no space for chaos, certainly no room for a woman who packed 3 suitcases for a 3-day trip and danced barefoot in the hallway. And yet, here she was. Ariel Monroe, best friend of the bride, hurricane in heels, a body that turned heads, a laugh that made people stop mid-conversation. And worst of all, she didn't give a damn who Damian Blake was. From the moment she flounced into his suite, smelling like vanilla and sunshine, his carefully guarded world began to unravel. One shared bed, one towel left on the floor, one snarky remark after another. But what started as tension slowly cracked into something dangerous, something undeniable. He wasn't supposed to notice the way her dress clung to her curves. She wasn't supposed to hear the crack in his voice when he talked about his past. They weren't supposed to kiss under the stars or hold each other when the music faded. They both had one rule: don't fall. But when the wedding ends and real life begins, can a one-room mistake turn into a once-in-a-lifetime love? The gentle crash of ocean waves filled the air as Damian Blake stepped out of his sleek black town car and onto the white stone driveway of Azure Dunes Resort. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, and the resort staff practically fell over themselves to grab his luggage. He gave them a curt nod before striding confidently into the grand lobby. He wasn't here for the view or the sun or the ridiculous island-themed drinks everyone kept mentioning in the group chat. Damian Blake was here for one reason: to be the best man in his childhood best friend's wedding. Jake Turner was like a brother to him, and if Jake wanted a beach wedding with pina coladas and awkward dance floors, then Damian would show up, even if he hated everything about weddings. He approached the marble check-in desk and slid his sunglasses off. Reservation under Damian Blake. The young woman behind the desk beamed as she tapped at the computer. Yes, Mr. Blake, welcome to Azure Dunes. There's been a minor hiccup with the room assignments. Damian's brow rose. Define hiccup. Well, due to a last-minute overbooking, we had to consolidate some guests. Your suite has been paired with another of the wedding party. I beg your pardon? You're sharing a suite, sir, with Miss Ariel Monroe. Damian blinked. Emily's best friend? She nodded, sheepish. He raked a hand through his thick, dark hair. Isn't there another room available? I'm afraid we're fully booked for the weekend. Damian exhaled slowly. Fine. Keycard, please. He snatched the card, muttered a thank you, and headed toward the elevator. Sharing a room with some Instagram influencer type wasn't on his itinerary. He remembered Ariel vaguely from Jake's engagement party. Curvy, loud, always laughing. She was the complete opposite of the women he usually spent time with. Model thin, polished, quiet. The elevator doors opened to the top floor, and he walked down the corridor to Suite 604. The door clicked open, and there she was. Ariel Monroe, wearing a silky robe, curls piled on her head, a clay face mask smeared across her cheeks, and absolutely no shame. Oh great, you're the mystery roommate. You knew? Emily warned me. She said you'd be grumpy about it. You're kind of proving her right. He dropped his bag on the luggage stand with a sigh. I'm not grumpy. I'm structured. Ariel snorted. Sure, let's go with that. You take structure, I'll take spontaneity. Works for me. Damian glanced around the suite. One bed. King-sized. Of course. I'll have the couch made up, he muttered, removing his blazer. No need. I already claimed the couch. My back is used to odd sleeping arrangements, she said breezily. Plus, I snore. He froze. You're joking. She winked. Only slightly. Damien retreated to the bathroom to change, baffled by the situation. When he returned, she had lit a candle and was humming to some indie playlist. The suite smelled like vanilla and citrus. Her suitcase was open and spilling clothes and accessories all over her side of the room. His things were still neatly zipped. Ariel lay back on the couch with her phone, scrolling and chuckling to herself. "What exactly do you do again?" he asked, unable to help himself. She looked up. Body-positive fashion influencer and part-time speaker for self-esteem and wellness conferences. So, Instagram and TEDx and Spotify and YouTube and a little modeling here and there. Damien crossed his arms. "That's surprisingly entrepreneurial." "Why, thank you, Mr. Blake. Was that a compliment? It was a surprise. Same thing in your world?" He gave a half smile. "Touché." Later that evening, after the rehearsal dinner and welcome cocktails, Damien returned to the room late, slightly exhausted from small talk and even smaller finger foods. Ariel was already there, sprawled on the bed in an oversized t-shirt, flipping through a bridal magazine. Damien stood in the doorway, unsure of where to go. "You're seriously taking the couch?" she asked, sitting up. "I thought you claimed it." "I changed my mind. My back is not what it used to be after heels and 5 outfit changes today." He hesitated. "We're not both sleeping on the bed." "Why not?" "It's big. We're adults. And I don't bite, unless provoked." Damien's jaw clenched. "It's not appropriate." Ariel rolled her eyes. "We're not in Victorian England. Relax." In the end, they both took opposite sides of the bed, back to back, a pillow fortress built in between. 10 minutes passed in silence. "Do you always breathe that loudly when you sleep?" Ariel whispered. "I'm not asleep." "Oh, good. I thought I was laying next to Darth Vader." Damien couldn't help it. He laughed, quietly. Ariel smiled into the dark. "See? You're not as cold as you act." He turned slightly, catching a glimpse of her profile in the moonlight pouring through the sheer curtains. There was something wild and warm about her, a kind of bold softness. She was nothing like the women in his world of corporate boardrooms and rigid expectations. "I'm not cold," he said quietly. "I'm careful." That sounds lonely. Damien paused. No one ever called him lonely. Before he could respond, Ariel sighed and turned over. "Good night, Mr. Best Man." "Good night, Miss Maid of Honor." He lay there for a long time, listening to her breathing grow steady. The scent of her vanilla candle still hung in the air. For the first time in years, he found himself wide awake in a bed because of a woman, and not for the usual reasons. Something told him this wedding weekend was going to be far more complicated and far more unforgettable than he ever expected. Damien Blake stood at the breakfast buffet staring at a suspiciously colorful fruit parfait. He wasn't a breakfast guy. He was a protein shake and black coffee guy. But apparently, a destination wedding meant mandatory participation in every scheduled group event, including brunch with the bridesmaids, which he was already regretting. He scanned the beachside restaurant patio until his eyes landed on her. Ariel Monroe. Seated at a corner table, laughing loudly with a mimosa in one hand and sunglasses perched atop her head. Her bright yellow sundress hugged every curve, and her hair was coiled in a high puff that made her look like a walking ray of sunshine, a very distracting ray of sunshine. She spotted him instantly and waved dramatically as if she hadn't shared a bed with him just hours before. She called out to him, teasingly announcing his arrival from the dungeon. He sighed, grabbed a cup of coffee, and reluctantly made his way over. A few bridesmaids were already at the table, sipping drinks and eyeing him with curiosity. Ariel teased that he looked tense, and he dryly responded that someone just offered him a guava pancake. She grinned and urged him to sit and enjoy the view, or at least pretend not to be plotting his escape. Damien sat beside her, careful not to let their arms touch. She asked if he ever toned it down, and he shot back asking if her energy was messing with his Wall Street aura. A few women chuckled, and Damien fought the urge to smile. An hour later, Damien was slipping on his sunglasses and heading back toward the resort when Ariel jogged up beside him barefoot, sandals in hand. She commented that he survived, and he replied that 3 cups of coffee and tuning out half the conversation helped. She asked if he was always this stiff or if weddings brought it out of him. He denied being stiff, claiming he was just selective. She tilted her head and translated that to guarded, like Fort Knox. He insisted he wasn't a mystery to be solved. She quipped that she hated puzzles, then admitted she loved them. They walked in silence for a moment as the wind played with her sundress and his tie, the ocean glittering nearby. Casually, she mentioned Googling him last night. He wasn't surprised. She commented on his wealth, and he added that he was also more punctual. She laughed and gave him a touche. Back at the suite, Ariel collapsed on the couch claiming the mimosa hit hard. Damien loosened his tie and removed his blazer, saying he had calls to make because business doesn't pause for weddings. She peered at him and asked if he ever relaxed. He claimed he was relaxing right then. She pointed out that he was standing with crossed arms and frowning at his phone. He blinked and looked down, conceding her point. A few hours later, the group gathered for a beach volleyball game. Damien planned to skip it, until Jake dragged him by the collar. Of course, Ariel was already there in high-waisted shorts and a sports bra, stretching dramatically while energizing her team. She called out to him playfully and asked if he was on their team. He groaned, but agreed. 2 minutes in, Damien realized he hadn't played since college. 10 minutes in, Ariel spiked the ball straight at him and shouted for him to keep up. She was infuriating. She was also exhilarating. Afterward, sunburned and breathless, he collapsed beside her on a beach chair. He accused her of trying to murder him. She corrected him, saying she was trying to wake him up. He congratulated her. He was fully conscious and possibly concussed. She laughed and handed him a water bottle, noting that he wasn't so bad when he stopped being himself. He asked who she thought he was. She looked at him softly and said he was someone afraid to loosen control, someone who was more than he let on. He countered that she didn't even know him. She replied, "Not yet." Their gaze lingered, the moments stretching between them, until someone called their names and broke the spell. That evening they dressed for the rehearsal dinner. Damien wore navy slacks and a crisp white shirt. Ariel emerged in a wine-colored bodycon dress that made his jaw tighten. He cleared his throat and commented on the dress. She raised a brow, interpreting it as either a compliment or a warning. He confirmed it was both. She grinned and grabbed her clutch, inviting him to stir up the boring dinner with her. The rehearsal dinner was held under glowing lanterns in the resort's garden courtyard. Wine flowed, speeches were made, and people danced beneath the stars. Damien stayed to the side until Ariel found him and questioned why he always lurked in corners. He replied that people like her did enough socializing for everyone. She leaned in and asked him to dance. He resisted, claiming he didn't dance. She didn't believe him. He admitted he didn't dance well. She insisted it didn't matter and pulled him onto the dance floor. The music was slow and sultry. Her hand slipped into his. The other rested on his shoulder. They moved cautiously at first. He stiff, she fluid. But soon, they found a rhythm. Her body fit against his like they had done this before. She murmured that he was staring. He admitted he was trying to figure her out. She told him good luck. He leaned in slightly and noted that she enjoyed challenging him. She said she enjoyed making him feel something. His breath caught, and she asked if he did feel something. He didn't get a chance to answer because someone bumped into them, splashing champagne across his back. The moment shattered. Ariel said she was going to get some air and walked away. Later that night, Damien stood on the balcony watching the waves crash below. Ariel joined him, arms wrapped around herself. She apologized for pushing earlier. He said she didn't. She turned to him and said he was the kind of man who controlled the temperature of every room. But people like her, people who light fires, existed too. And he wasn't as cold as he pretended to be. He looked at her, eyes dark, and agreed. She stepped closer and asked why he was so scared. He confessed he had built a world where vulnerability had no place and feelings were liabilities. She noted that despite that, here he was, sharing a suite with a woman who made him feel everything. Silence pulsed between them. Her hand brushed his. He turned. She stepped into him, and in a swift, charged moment, he kissed her. It wasn't soft, it wasn't tentative, it was fire meeting ice and both melting. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Ariel smiled and whispered that it was one way to end the night. He was about to respond when a loud knock echoed from the suite's door. They froze. She laughed, calling him Mr. Blake and teasing that he was saved by the bell. The knock at the door echoed through the suite again. Ariel untangled herself from Damien's arms, cheeks flushed, lips tingling, heart racing. She was still catching her breath when he walked to the front door and opened it to reveal Jake, looking slightly tipsy with a loosened tie and a glass of whiskey in hand. "There you are." Jake boomed with a grin, saying he'd been looking for them and insisting they join the late-night poker game at the poolside bar. Damien started to protest, saying now wasn't really but Jake waved it off, declaring that Damien was the best man and had to be there for tradition. Jake's eyes drifted past Damien and spotted Ariel, greeting her with a cheeky comment about the roommate arrangement going great. Ariel laughed nervously and replied that Jake had no idea. After a playful threat that he'd send the whole groomsmen squad after them in 10 minutes, Jake wobbled off down the hallway. Damien closed the door and leaned against it, muttering that, well, that happened. Ariel smiled softly, the heat between them still thick in the air, noting that they had 10 minutes, apparently. Damien crossed the room, the earlier tension still dancing in his posture, and told her what happened on the balcony was real. She agreed in a whisper, acknowledging it wasn't just some wedding weekend fling. He reminded her they lived in different cities and different worlds. She ran a small nonprofit in New Orleans while he ran a billion-dollar firm in New York. Ariel stepped closer and pointed out that somehow they had shared a bed for 2 nights without killing each other. He joked it was because she was too busy mocking his wardrobe, and she countered that he was too busy judging her music playlist. He chuckled, then turned serious. He hadn't let anyone in for years, but she had crashed into his life like a tidal wave, laughing too loud, saying what she meant, flirting like it was breathing. And yet he had never felt more seen. Ariel's eyes welled as she confessed she pretended to be fearless but had been burned by men who wanted her body but not her brain, who told her she was too much, too loud, too curvy, too everything. Damien's jaw tightened as he said they were idiots. She smiled, pointing out that here they were, 2 people afraid to fall. He reached for her hand and said, "Then let's fall together, 1 step at a time." She squeezed his fingers and teased that he really was a romantic under all that Armani. Before he could respond, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up and groaned. It was the bride, asking for help with her vows. Damien checked his watch and noted that he had poker duty in 5. She leaned in and kissed his cheek, asking to be continued. He nodded. Definitely. Later that night, the resort was quiet by 2 a.m. The poker game had ended with Jake singing off-key and someone jumping into the pool fully clothed. Damien returned to the suite exhausted, only to find Ariel already asleep on the couch, a book splayed across her chest. He paused in the doorway and just watched her, the way her curls fanned around her face, the slow rise and fall of her chest, the faint crease between her brows even in sleep. She was chaos wrapped in sunshine, and he wanted her more than anything. Quietly, he lifted the book, placed a blanket over her, and whispered, "Good night." Puzzle. The next morning, the resort buzzed with excitement. White roses lined the aisle, a harpist played soft music, and guests sipped champagne under a flower-covered arch overlooking the ocean. Damien stood near the altar with Jake, trying not to fidget with his cufflinks. He scanned the crowd until he saw Ariel walking down the aisle, not as a bridesmaid this time, but helping the flower girls and carrying the train of the bride's dress. She was stunning in lavender silk that hugged her hips, her lips glossed with a shimmer that lit up her smile. Their eyes met briefly, and her wink sent his pulse racing. Jake leaned in and whispered that Damien was totally into her. Damien didn't bother denying it. After the ceremony, the reception began under strings of fairy lights. Speeches were made, glasses clinked, and the music kicked in. Ariel found Damien by the open bar and told him he cleaned up well. He replied he always looked like this, and she quipped that was exactly her point. He leaned in and asked her to dance for real this time. She arched a brow, asking if he meant in front of everyone. He said he didn't care who saw. She took his hand and led him to the floor. This time there was no hesitation. His hand slid around her waist, her arms wrapped around his neck, and they moved in perfect sync as a slow, dreamy song filled the air. People whispered and stared, but they didn't care. As the final notes played, Damien cupped her cheek and kissed her. Right there on the dance floor, under the lights, in front of everyone. Ariel's eyes fluttered open with a soft wow. He whispered that's what she did to him. Then Jake grabbed the mic and announced that the bridal suite had a plumbing issue, which meant room changes. Everyone groaned, but Jake reassured them. He said Ariel had been moved to a different room, and Damien was stuck with the party crew. Ariel turned to Damien with a teasing smile and noted that their forced roommate situation was over. He nodded and said, unless they made it less forced. She tilted her head in curiosity. He took her hand and asked her to come back to New York with him, for a weekend, a week, a month, whatever she wanted. Let's see where this goes. Her eyes widened as she asked if he was serious. He replied as serious as a hostile takeover. She laughed and said she couldn't just drop everything. He offered to come to her instead, her rules, her city, even promising to eat beignets and dance in the streets if she asked. She grinned and told him he'd hate that. He said he'd love it if she was there. She leaned in and agreed on one condition: no more emotional armor. He nodded and said deal, but only if she stopped calling him Wall Street. She refused. Absolutely not. They kissed again, laughter dancing between them. 1 week later, Ariel stood at the terminal gate in New York with oversized sunglasses on her head and passport in hand. Damien waited just past security with 2 coffees and a smile that made her knees weak. He greeted her with a welcome to Manhattan and handed her the cup. She took a sip and teased that he probably hired a barista to get it just right. Maybe, he admitted. They walked out into the city together side by side. Curvy chaos and billionaire precision. Fire and ice. A room assignment that changed everything. And the start of something neither of them saw coming. 6 months later, Ariel stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of Damien's Manhattan penthouse, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, and his hoodie draped over her curves. The city buzzed below, but in this moment, the world felt still. She smiled as Damien walked up behind her, pressing a kiss to the back of her neck, his arms sliding around her waist. "You're up early," she murmured. "I wanted to watch the sunrise. And I have something to tell you." He turned her gently to face him. "You're not pregnant, are you?" She snorted. "No, but nice to know that's where your mind goes." He grinned. "All right, hit me." She held up a shiny silver key between her fingers. "I signed the lease. I'm keeping my apartment in New Orleans, but I'm also moving into this place, part-time." Damien's smile softened. "So you're staying?" "I'm choosing both cities, but mostly, I'm choosing you." He took the key, kissed it, then pressed it back into her palm. "You're the best unexpected roommate I've ever had, and you're the most annoying billionaire I've ever fallen in love with." They kissed as the city bloomed with morning light, 2 coffee cups cooling on the counter behind them. Symbols of chaos and order finally finding balance. Sometimes love doesn't knock. Sometimes it barges in with too many bags, takes your side of the bed, and turns your world completely upside down. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Bye. See you in our next video.